So I was recently looking through the writing chapter of my book, These Six Things. I wanted to see how well has the argument that I made for writing instruction, for writing being a part of the regular school day, all across the content areas, how well has that argument aged in an era where I can type any prompt or any task into a generative AI website and have produced for me, with nothing more than a well-worded prompt, a piece of writing that is likely superior in at least some fundamental ways to what I can produce, and definitely superior to what I can produce in the same amount of time. And here's an argument that I thought was kind of interesting when you think about this generative AI that is present today that was not present when this book came out in 2018. I wrote, "Writing well will be an enormous advantage for future workers. Journalist Esther Cepeda has memorably quipped that those students fortunate enough to be part of the 27% of proficient writers on the National Assessment of Educational Progress will be the, quote, rock stars of their generation." I went on to say what she means is that this minority of proficient writers is going to have first dibs on the many opportunities that call for proficient writing, whether they want to forge their own path building an online business, work their way up the ranks of a manufacturing company like General Motors, or advocate for policy changes on Capitol Hill. Those who possess writing ability will have an all too rare superpower. Are Cepeda's arguments still valid in a world with things like ChatGPT? I think to answer this question, we have to be clear on what writing is actually for. When I ask students to write in response to a prompt, when I ask them to construct an essay, to complete a quick write, what am I actually trying to make happen there? What do I believe is happening inside the minds and souls of my students? If all that's happening is the creation of a product, the creation of a piece of writing that someone else can read, then I would argue that today versus in 2012 when Cepeda wrote her article, possessing writing ability is no longer a rare superpower. If writing is only about the creation of a product, something that can be turned in, something that can be submitted, then we now all have access to this superpower. Any one of my students, if they're given the opportunity, could take a really complex world history prompt, they could put it inside of ChatGPT, they could tell ChatGPT to answer it at a collegiate level, and ChatGPT pretty reliably will do so. And this reliability and skill that the AI brings to the task is only going to increase in the next probably months. Any of them with an internet connection can do this. But the question is that what writing in class is for? Is writing in class just about the creation of a product? Is it just about demonstrating my ability to create a piece of prose in response to a prompt? And of course, it's not. Writing is actually about thinking. It's about exploration. It's about growing clearer. And ultimately, it's about what all our classes are about, that being growing toward mastery of a body of knowledge, of a discipline. But how can we articulate this to our students in a way that will make sense, that will connect with their hearts, that will cultivate a value of writing and a value of the mastery toward which that writing aims? Not coercively, not through guilt, not through fear, but through the genuine communication of the value of this type of work, this work of writing. In the remaining minutes of this video, I want to give you a handful of mini sermons that you can use with students. If you're a student watching this, these mini sermons are things that you can think about as you try to become clear on why you ought to put your best effort to the writing task that you're given. Why, no matter what the outcome of the task is, you can remain confident that you will emerge from a writing attempt a stronger, more capable, more likely to flourish human being. Reason number one, writing uncovers poor understanding. Let's imagine I'm teaching a science unit in which photosynthesis is a topic of study. We've gone through the lessons to teach students how photosynthesis works. Maybe we've done a few experiments, and I now want to see if the students are ready to move on. What's the quickest way for me to see where my students are at in terms of their understanding of photosynthesis and other related vocabulary, such as autotroph, chlorophyll, chloroplast, pigment, and reactants? This is an example from page 165 of These Six Things. The best thing that I could do is to take 5 minutes of class and say, here are 5 vocabulary words related to photosynthesis. I'd like you to write a paragraph describing what these words mean and how they form this big picture process, this amazing process of photosynthesis in plants. As my students were writing this out, looking at the projector screen, at the prompt, at the vocabulary words, there'd be a lot of furrowed brows, there'd be maybe some frustration. Some students would likely quit because they would quickly realize, I don't understand this as well as I thought. Writing uncovers poor understanding. One of the main reasons that I write blog articles for teachers and write books for teachers is because, though it is very laborious and painful and frustrating, that laboriousness, pain, and frustration produces in me an awareness of what I don't understand. And as I go through the process of pushing through that discomfort, that difficulty of doing the hard thing of writing about teaching, by the time that I'm done with the writing session, I emerge with a greater clarity of hopefully the topic I'm trying to write about, or at very least, the degree to which I don't actually understand the topic that I've attempted to treat. So this week in a few of my classes, I actually guided my students through a progression of writing activities meant to help them gain an awareness of what they didn't understand and slowly develop a fuller understanding of core ideas in our unit. We're studying the Middle Ages, and this idea of the Dark Ages comes up in history during this time period, and I've gotten my students thinking throughout the unit about what is meant by historians when they call something a dark age, and is a dark age really a fitting term for the whole of the world during the Middle Ages, or does it only apply to some locations? And so I asked them, were the Byzantines in a dark age in this time period? Explain. Was Western Europe in a dark age during this time? Explain. Was the Abbasid Empire in a dark age during this time? Explain. And on the first day that we did this as a warm-up, there was a lot of frustration. And so I was ready for this, and I told my students, attempt to answer the question on your paper, just a blank sheet of paper, without using any notes. Then, when you're fully tapped out, use your notes to complete your answer. After the students had attempted both phases of that warm-up, we went over answers as a class. Think, pair, share, some brief discussion. We then put it away. The next day in class, I gave them the same prompts, and I told them this time, no notes at all. Let's see what you can produce with no notes whatsoever. When they were fully tapped out, meaning all pencils have stopped moving, everyone is sitting there looking at their paper, trying to come up with more. Then we went and looked at our pieces from yesterday and made modifications to our work today to demonstrate the fullest understanding that we were capable of. Tomorrow, my students will be taking a test, and part of this test will be asking them those exact same questions. There will be no notes at all, and what I predict, based on past experience and based on the way that writing works, is that my students will produce much more sophisticated and understanding-rich writing than they were able to produce just 2 days ago. This little progression only took about 10 minutes per day on the 2 days preceding the test, but its results are really significant. And I'm talking about historically low-achieving students, historically high-achieving students. All of them are growing a lot during those 10-minute warm-ups on those 2 subsequent days. And this is because of what writing does in terms of uncovering poor understanding. And then this links with our second reason that writing's important. Writing clarifies our thinking. So as I sit down to write about a topic in whatever class, or even just write about something in my personal life, I'm quickly confronted by the lack of understanding that I have. I have to grapple with the poor understanding that currently exists inside of my mind, but as I push through that and attempt to put words on the page, as I then discuss the things that I've written as a class and listen to other people, my understanding improves. And as my understanding improves, so does my clarity of thinking. Here's where we do have an amazing superpower that ChatGPT and whatever other AI software you can think of cannot do for me. The only way to arrive at clear thinking is to do work. It's just like the only way for me to arrive at bigger muscles is to do work. I have to lift weights. I have to exercise. I have to apprentice myself to the disciplines of strength building. And here's where I think Esther Cepeda's point still stands. Even though there's now software that can produce amazing writing at the typing in of a few prompts, no matter how good your ChatGPT product is, it's not going to make you a clearer thinker. In fact, you're very likely to land in a place where you have a misguided sense of how capable you actually are. You're like a varsity soccer player playing the game with 8-year-olds. You're going to feel amazing at that time, but it's not because you're actually amazing. It's because the context that you're in is tricking you into thinking that you're amazing. And so I don't think that there's no place for the use of generative AI in the work of a thinker, the work of a grower, the work of a learner. It's just that being really good at the use of generative AI is not going to make you a smarter individual. It's not going to make your thinking more clear. And in fact, the more that you use it, the more you're likely going to think that it doesn't matter to be a clear thinker. It doesn't matter to know what you know and don't know. And so what can develop is a hubristic approach to life where I've got this tool and that's all that I need. And then suddenly when you're getting passed up for interviews, when folks in the workplace or in your life aren't impressed by who you are as a person, you're confused because you put so much trust in this product that you're able to produce with this tool, this AI tool, and you haven't put enough trust in the tried and true growth that comes through writing. But let's move into a third reason that writing's important, in that it helps you to explore your inner world. For the second month of this school year, I decided to give my students 3 writing prompts that would range in a variety of directions, and the goal for them was in 10 minutes time to produce at least 100 words, to keep track of their personal record of word count. And I'm continuing to talk to them about why we're doing what we're doing and push yourself to your personal best every day. And these prompts include things like, since you've become a teenager, what's the greatest challenge you've faced? What career do you think that you're best suited for? What's the most important thing anyone has ever said to you? Imagine you're an advisor to your future self. 10 years from now, what advice would you give to make sure that they stay on the right path? And I'm not coming up with all these prompts on my own. I'm Googling good prompts to get teenagers writing. And to me, this wouldn't be a bad place to ask ChatGPT to come up with a list of writing prompts. This is a type of task where I don't think I'm going to get a ton of bang for my buck just coming up with prompt after prompt. I mean, I need 3 per day. Time is finite. So I don't think that that's a bad place to use these tools to increase your efficiencies. But as they're doing this, I'm trying to explain to them that the inner exploration we're engaging in during these writing warm-ups is incredibly important in life. You are going to have to live with you for the rest of your life. So it makes sense to get to know this person, to explore what they value, what they think, what their theories of the future are. And isn't it amazing that in just 10 minutes per day for about a month's time, we can look back in our spiral notebooks and see all these little inner exploratory journeys that we've taken in relatively short amounts of time. So writing can uncover poor understanding, it can create clarity of thought, it can also help me to explore me. As I grow an understanding of me, as I grow clear in thinking about what I am doing in this world, there's just a significantly greater amount of power that I have to engage with life in both its high points and low points. And this is a power that I argue can't be accessed as efficiently and as effectively in any way outside of writing. If the biggest takeaway that students have from this month of my class has nothing to do with history, but instead has to do with the interesting things that I can explore in writing in 10 minutes a day, I think that'd be a remarkably impactful contribution to make in a student's life. So there's only 3 reasons in this video that I want to talk about, but I think that what's important is that we talk about reasons like this, or maybe reasons that you have for getting your students writing a lot, in a lot of different ways. And we describe these things in terms of their strategic usefulness for life, but also their deep beauty. Also how enjoyable it is to gain clarity, understanding, to explore one's inner world. To point my students' attention once in a while to what is it like to sit in a room of people all writing, to share those answers out in a think, pair, share, or a whole class discussion afterwards. What kind of feeling do you get? And could you get that feeling if instead of doing this work, we decided that we were just going to not worry about writing anymore because ChatGPT can do it for us from now on? Is Esther Cepeda still right? when she says that those proficient in writing will be the rock stars of their generation. I don't know. And I don't know that I'm super curious about that anymore. I'm not trying to create the rock stars of a generation. I'm trying to promote the long-term flourishing of young people by teaching them to master the classes that I'm tasked with teaching them to master, and even more deeply to master the avenues that human beings have been using for millennia to uncover their misunderstandings, to clarify their thinking, and to gain inner growth. I hope there's at least something in here that helps you think about this work of writing in your classroom, or if you're a student, that helps you think about writing in your life. And if you did find the video helpful, please consider subscribing, as it supports my work a lot.